right, well, welcome. There's tea and coffee in back if you'd like to get something warm to drink. I'd like to thank everybody for coming today. I'd like to thank the Canaan Library for hosting our spring gardening series. I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Christine Segalis. I'm an organic land care professional as accredited by the Connecticut Northeast Organic Farming Association, NOFA as it's known. Our standards of organic land care and basic principles include we are stewards to combine the health of soil, plant, animal, human, and planet. We emulate living ecological systems and cycles to help sustain them. And we build equity, respect, justice, and stewardship of our shared world. And we act in precautionary and responsible ways towards the earth. I'm also a certified instructor in the square foot gardening method. I'm an artist and a photographer. All of the pictures, or most of the pictures, you're going to see here are my own photographs. A few years ago, while working on our garden, we had a lot of our friends, Mark and I, comment to us about how they didn't know how to get started in gardening. They've always wanted a vegetable garden. Before they knew it, it was July, or they just didn't know how to start. And Mark and I, at the time, were looking to change our lives to get away from being behind the desk. And we decided to go and start Homegrown Harvest. And our main goal with Homegrown Harvest was to help people start growing vegetables in an easy way so that they could enjoy it and so that they would reap the full benefits nutritionally from growing their own fresh vegetables. So today we're here to talk about our second topic in our series, which is small space gardening. It's polycultures. Hopefully they've let me. Okay, I'm not clicking. Okay. Plenty of fruits and vegetables can be grown in small spaces. Developing a polyculture garden allows us to yield harvests that are up to 15 times what a conventional row garden yields in much less space. The higher plant densities in intensive gardening demand fertile, well-drained soil that's annually enriched with organic matter. The combination of vegetables and herbs and flowers is more effective in attracting insects and pollinators to the garden. Native bees actually prefer annual flowers. So first we need to meet the important players in the plant world, the stars of our garden. I've divided these into 5 families. These are the main 5 that I basically work and deal with. So the first family is the Radishes. These are cool weather crop lovers that they're the main acts in the spring and the fall garden. They're hardy plants and half-hardy plants, which means that they can tolerate a frost or a light frost. The cucumber family, cucurbits, squash family. These are the warm weather lovers. They need some room to sprawl out and to vine. Don't plant these guys before, you have to make sure that there's no chance of frost. They're very tender plants or tender plants, which means that even a slight frost could kill them. They need lots of sun, 8+ hours. The Solanaceae, the nightshade family, you know them as the tomato family or potato family. Also warm weather lovers. They also are tender and very tender plants, meaning frost or light frost will kill them. They need a good 8 hours plus of sunlight. This family also includes on the ornamental line petunias and million bells. Their things are not clicking my thing. The Fabaceae family, bean family, legumes. The pea family. These are the nitrogen fixers of the garden. They take nitrogen from the air, and they're able to convert it into a form for their own use and for the plants around them on a soil level. Some of these crops are hardy, like peas, and they can tolerate a hard frost. So, but then on the flip side, you have beans who cannot. So certain plant families, like I discussed before, the Solanaceae, those are all pretty much all tender plants or half tender. In the legume family, you kind of have the spectrum there, because peas are one of the first things we put into the ground. As soon as we can get into underneath the snow and 2 inches of soil, which we will be able to do soon, like a month, we will. In the raised beds, that's one of the nice things about a raised bed. The soil warms up faster than the ground, so you can, if you can get snow away and you can get to the first 2 inches, that's all we need. They're very hardy crops, such as peas, that actually love the cold. The Apiaceae family, the carrot family. These crops, insects love these crops, so these are great to include into the garden to attract beneficial insects. So those were the first 5 families, and as I said before, those are the ones I focus on initially when I'm setting up a garden. The rest of the family are the players that I kind of work with to mix in and around. So of the rest, we have the Liliaceae family, your alliums. This includes garlic and onions, shallots. Daffodils and hosta are also included in that same family on the ornamental line. If you have deer who are going after your hostas, you may want to plant some onions and garlic near them, because the deer don't like the smell of the onions and the garlic. So they work together nicely. They're in the same family, and they'll help keep very hungry deer away. The Asteraceae family, the sunflower family. This crop includes lettuce and artichoke, radicchio, tarragon. And the related ornamentals you're familiar with are Calendula, which are also known as pot marigolds, and they are not related to marigolds. Marigolds are also in this family. Echinacea, mums, rutabaga, yarrow, and zinnias. The Lamiaceae family, this is where most of the herbs that are in the same family. Basil, catnip, lavender, marjoram, oregano, rosemary, and thyme. On the ornamental side, salvia. Herbs are easy to grow, and they're an integral part of setting up a polyculture. The Canopodiaceae family, ACI family, the goosefoot family. Beets, chard, spinach, and sugar beets are in this family. So these last families that I've been discussing, they don't rely so much on crop rotation. The first 5 really need to have crop rotation in it, and I'm going to get into crop rotation in a little bit. In order to understand what a polyculture is, we need to discuss what a monocrop is. Monocropping is simply planting a single crop cultivar in a bed, and that can increase your chances of soil-borne diseases building up, and you risk losing a whole crop that way. A few years ago, we had a woman call us. She'd been on vacation. She was frantic. She came home to her garden, and she was like, "Can you come over? There's something wrong. I don't know what's going on." So we go over to the garden. She had a beautiful garden. She had 4 raised beds that were like 4 by 12s. And around the garden, she had like 2-foot beds that went all the way around. And in her garden, as we were talking to her and we're looking at her plants, and not all of them were dead yet, but they were dying from the bottom up. And she had said that she had a similar problem the year before, You know, and I'm looking at the bed, and it's completely a monocrop. There's just tomatoes in it. There's no flowers. There's no herbs. No nothing. Just tomatoes, all of the same variety. And in conversation, she has said that similar thing was happening last year. You know, her yields were going less and less. Well, the thing is, she's been planting her garden the same way year in, year out. She had the beds to rotate, but she didn't know enough to rotate. So she had the space, but she didn't realize that that's what she needed to do. And we sent the plants off to UConn to check to make sure it wasn't anything on the plant level. UConn looked at it and said, no, it's not the plant, it's the soil. Send us a soil sample. Send us a soil sample. It was the soil. Even though she had been amending those beds every year, she swore up and down by the way she was doing things organically and everything. The thing is, even when you pull the roots out, you're not getting 100%. You're leaving behind somewhere between a third to a quarter of the roots. And in the soil, that's over time, it gives the chance for the bad pathogens to continue to build. Doesn't matter the winter and all of that, they stay in the soil and they continue to grow. So this is why monocropping is highly not suggested. And we like to do polycultures. The polyculture is an organic method which brings variety into the garden. It breaks up the monoculture, and therefore it deters disease and bad bug infestation. And it adds beauty and color to the garden. Building a polyculture is an organic methodology which focuses on building soil health and helps eliminate the need for chemical fertilizers and pesticides. It's a way of planting your garden so that the plants that benefit from each other are put in close proximity to one another. And it enhances the overall beauty and health, working in harmony with nature. Polycultures, intensive cropping, intercropping, square foot gardening, it's all companion planting. It's creating a variety that breaks up the monoculture, helping to deter disease and bad bug infestation. So there are four main principles in setting up a polyculture. The first one is setting up permanent garden beds, raised beds. This allows you to more easily control your soil environment versus planting directly into the ground. Setting up raised beds gives you the flexibility as well. You can make raised beds as tall as you need to if you have a bad back or knees and you don't want to bend. Raised beds also take the back-breaking work out, like the rototilling and the hoeing. You won't have any rocks. They can be, they're very energy efficient since you're focusing everything on that area. So there's no wasted space. We recommend that you don't make your beds wider than 4 feet, as long as you can get around on all 4 sides. You always want to reach into the bed. You never want to walk into it. If it's up against a wall or your house or something, then make it about 3 feet. You never want to walk between the rows. The empty spaces encourages weed seeds to take root, and it also compacts the soil. Soil compaction is the main reason gardeners end up having to till and hoe and do all that back-breaking work. Research actually has shown that reduced tillage systems, result in a higher population of beneficial fungi and that moves the nutrients and water through the soil column. Soils that are less disrupted have more beneficial nematodes, earthworms, soil mites, and other microorganisms. So when you start your raised bed, start small. It's easy to add on. You don't need big raised beds to grow a lot of food when you plant intensively. So now we're going to talk about what the actual growing medium for the inside of the beds. And in order to understand what makes a fertile growing medium, we need to understand what makes food nutritious. Our ancestors knew what it took, and scientists agreed in 2009. Crops get their nutrients from the soil. Healthy soil leads to higher nutrients in crops. According to the scientists, it's a fact that healthy soils are responsible for the production of foodborne antibodies, vitamins, phytochemicals, and amino acids that are crucial to our human health. The right soil will yield the most nutritious and flavorful food possible, and current research supports organic pioneers who first theorized that soils rich in organic matter produce more nutritious food. Healthy soil is biologically alive and balanced in minerals and carbon content. Garden soil is a community of bacteria, fungi, nematodes, earthworms, and other unseen creatures that are so small they can only be seen by a microscope. These microscopic organisms are crucial to soil biology and health. Scientists estimate that in 1 gram of garden soil, it can contain 6,000 species of bacteria vital to the success of our gardens. This is something I try not to think about sometimes. Synthetic fertilizers used in commercial farming and gardening practices today reduce soil biodiversity. These chemical fertilizers provide nitrogen in chemical form in the form of nitrate to plants. That may push the growth of the plant, but it doesn't do anything to build healthy populations of soil organisms. The nitrate nitrogen, not only that's not absorbed by the plant, is simply leached out and washed away by rain and irrigation. These chemical fertilizers are made of high concentrations of mineral salts capable, when used in excess, of killing many soil organisms responsible for decomposition and soil formation. Simply adding chemicals leads to the soil degrading, and it will gradually lose its organic matter and its microbiotic activity. American farming soils have been depleted of these valuable nutrients, lessening the nutritious value of many of the fruits and vegetables that we're consuming today in the supermarkets. The nutritional content of food today is vastly different than what it was 70 years ago, and not in a good way. In the last 40 years, since 1975, USDA food composite tables consistently show nutritional value of harvested food has declined, showing substantial losses in vitamins and mineral content. One study says that we'd have to eat 8 oranges today to get the same amount of vitamin A that our grandparents ate from 1. And a woman eating 2 peaches in 1951 would have to eat 53 in 2002 to get the same nutritional value. So this is why it's important to grow some of your own food and to have fertile growing medium to do so in. Decomposition of organic matter is the organic content of soil. Natural fertilizers like composted farm animal manures, and cover crops nourish complex populations of soil organisms while improving the soil structure and nutrient holding capacity. Decomposing organic material increases carbon content into the soil. Organic nitrogen in these fertilizers slowly is broken down by soil life, resulting in a sustainable life level of soil nitrate nitrogen for plant use. So the second principle of intensive planting is reliance on compost. Compost is the food, the nutrient source that will feed the growth of your plants. The other part of our formula for the raised beds includes peat. Peat is a partially decomposed remains of plants, mostly common to sphagnum moss. An alternative to that would be coir, which is coconut fibers. Both the peat and coir retain water and keep the soil loose. Vermiculite is also used as a rock, which is mined and heated into little pieces. It has nooks and crannies that hold not only water but the nutrients in soil. So these things together help keep the soil friable and less dense. Vermiculite adds a little potassium and magnesium, but not enough to alter your pH levels. It's crucial for setting up a consistently moist soil environment for plants to take root and grow. Worm castings are like the icing on top, the nutrient-dense little treats that just are much better for the soil. Starting with this mixture, we've created a weed-free environment that's organically balanced for growing food. It's nutrient dense from the compost and the worm castings with moisture retention and friability, and that's how crumbly it is, controlled by the core or the peat or and the vermiculite. Every year, the only thing that needs to be replenished is the compost. So when you start a bed, this is the kind of what we use for our initial start, but then every year we just replace the compost. Yes?
What kind of compost do you use?
We use a combination, a variety of compost. The new Canaan compost is really good to use. It's a great source. We'll take it from a number of different sources so that we're making sure that it's certain composts are like byproducts from certain things. So one could be heavier in nitrogen, and so what we'll do is we'll source out like 2 or 3 different varieties that gives us a nice blend. So, if you're going to buy compost at, your local hardware or landscape place, maybe take a couple of different bags of, varieties. Check the label, see what their main source of, where they're getting, There's the compost from coast of Maine, which they use lobster and fish heads and stuff like that. And then there's blueberries and stuff like that. So you want to get a different variety of things. But I highly recommend, we've grown simply also just straight from the New Canaan compost, which is free to New Canaan residents. So we've covered the importance of the soil web and what that brings to the table. And as far as setting up the healthy foundation for our plants and seeds to take root and grow. The next thing we're going to discuss is what goes on above ground, and that's setting up the polyculture, the high-density plant mixing, the high-density mixed plantings. Polyculture is a high density of mixed plants that will cover the entire surface of a bed, mixing herbs with flowers and vegetables. So you're crowding out where weed seeds could possibly take root. The idea of diversity by planting different vegetable, flowers, and herbs closely together based on their shared benefits. Plants helping each other to grow efficiently while using the small space. High-density mixed plants take advantage of, I said that, a high for the big surface. There's a lot of folklore associated with companion plantings because gardeners love to share their stories and they pass them down for centuries and years. But there is a lot of scientific foundation behind polycultures. For example, trap cropping. That's plants whose scents attract certain insects, luring them away from the main crop. So for instance, nasturtiums do this for squash. They lure aphids away. Radishes draw flea beetles away from brassicas. Then you have the symbiotic nitrogen fixation. That's your legumes. Those are the ones who we discussed before. They take the nitrogen out of the air, and they're able to convert it into nitrogen that they can use and that the other plants around them in the soil can use. There's physical spatial interactions. Tall, sun-loving growers that can share space with lower shade lovers. That way you're yielding much more in less space, and you're also keeping the pest control in check. That's also referred to as stacking. Putting together a beneficial habitat or refugia provides a desirable environment for beneficial insects or other arthropods like predatory and parasitic insects, which keep the pest populations in balance. In order to have good bugs, we have to have bad bugs, because the good bugs eat the bad bugs. So it's a balance of nature. Insectiaries are a balanced mini ecosystem designed to ensure the presence of pollinators and beneficials, as well as predators. Agroecologists believe that this is a good way to reduce pest damage and pesticide usage. And my clicker is not working. In the plant families, the Asteraceae, the sunflower family, and the carrot family, those are two great attractors for beneficials and insectiary bugs. Biochemical pest suppression is when certain plants give off chemicals in their roots. Marigolds do this. They emit an enzyme that deters root-eating nematodes. So we always like to couple those with root crops, and we've been quite successful. Petunias also do this. They repel asparagus beetles. Companion planting has played a vital role in the survival of people throughout history. The three sisters, corn, bean, and squash, were used by the Iroquois American Indians in the Northeast. Jo-O-Ha-Ko actually means our sustainers, those who support us. Companion plantings are used to help each other companion plants are used to help each plant grow, thrive, produce higher yields efficiently with little impact on the environment. The corn, for instance, supports the beans, which adds nitrogen to the soil to rebuild the soil health for the following year. It also physically stabilizes the corn from strong winds. And the squash, with its prickly nature, protects the beans and the corn from predators, and its shallow roots become a living mulch, preventing weeds and retaining soil moisture. Nutritionally, the combination is powerful. The corn providing carbohydrates, the dried beans balance out the amino acids in the soil and that the corn's not providing, and the corn, the beans, and the squash is providing much needed vitamins for them. Yes?
Could corn be grown in a raised bed?
Absolutely. We grew corn last year. First time I was successful growing corn, I did the Three Sisters bed. Because I had tried it before, not using the Three Sisters bed. And it grew, but it didn't really come out well.
How large was the bed?
That was in a 4x8.
Oh, okay.
When you plant corn, you don't want to do it in rows. You actually want to do it in squares. So, and if you do it this way, I mean, it was delicious. So you can do it in raised beds, and you don't need a whole lot of space. Yes?
How many corn plants do you need if you do it in a square? Can you only do like 4 or 6 plants? Because they pollinate each other, right?
Right. So you, in the raised bed that we did, we had about 10 plants. All right, and that did not take all of the 4x8. So.
And do you plant the corn first and let them get going before you plant the beans?
Yes, exactly. And depending upon the corn, I also kind of staggered it. There was early season, mid-season, and late. So when I did our bed, I kind of staggered that. So it did land up coming out with, well, we had 10 plants, but they all kind of came at different times.
How many ears do you get per stalk?
About 2.
Okay.
Sometimes 1. You know, you're not going to get what you get at the grocery store. I mean, that's the thing when you're growing your own. The difference is the flavor, and when you buy heirloom corn seeds and such, you know, you're guaranteed there's no GMO. I mean, you can't go and get anything on the market today that's not GMO corn. There's a huge flavor difference. I mean, just like in an heirloom tomato, if you're familiar with the difference of tasting an heirloom tomato versus, you know, something that you can get at the grocery store, there's a huge flavor difference. And the same thing goes, you know, pretty much for, you know, any heirloom variety that you're going to grow, but particularly corn. And I tried a few times, and I wasn't successful. Mark kept on rolling his eyes every time I'd go to, you can do the corn again? It's like, well, you know, we got to try it. So the top 10 of there's so many plants out there, and you can go on the internet and you can Google companion plants, and you can find lists that are pages and pages and pages long, and it's great. And the more you learn, it's a good tool to have. I'm going to focus it down to 10. Basil's going to be the top one. We're going alphabetically, I'm sorry. Basil improves your flavor and growth of tomatoes, and so it's great in the garden and it's great on the plate. Its aromatic foliage helps repel aphids, flies, mosquitoes, tomato hornworms, and at the same time it's attracting beneficial insects and bees. There's a vast variety of different basils to choose from that give you different tastes and flavors. There's sweet Italian, which is the classic, African blue basil, Thai basil, Greek columnar basil. I love that because it's a very tall, thin plant, so you want to put it in a tall space. It also has a smaller leaf, so depends on how much chopping you want to do. There's borage. It's a tall annual herb. It grows to about 18 inches to just under 3 feet. Its edible flowers add a mild cucumber flavor to salads. It attracts beneficials. It's good with strawberry plants, and it deters tomato hornworms, improving the growth and flavor of squash. Oops, close up. It's very pretty. Dill. Dill's a good companion to the cabbage family, but it doesn't get along with everybody in its own family. I mean, who does? But with brassicas, it improves the health and growth of cabbage. It attracts beneficial wasps and controls cabbage pests. It's great with lettuce and onions, and it's a trap crop for tomato hornworms. Is everybody familiar with the tomato hornworm? This is the tomato hornworm. They're very difficult to spot because they blend in so well. When you see, or if you see one of these guys, you simply just pick it off. You can stick it in some soapy water. Sometimes they'll look like this. This is a tomato hornworm that has parasitic wasps on it. You want to leave these guys. The parasitic wasps are actually killing this guy, and they're going to kill more. So if they don't have these little white things on it, pick them off. If you find one of these guys, just leave it alone. It's doing its natural job. Yep?
I found one in the garden before I knew what it was, and then I finally got around to Googling it at like 10 o'clock at night, and I brought it into the house to show my kids, and once I read what the wasps were doing, I ran out and threw it back in.
So this is where we have to this is where we're working with nature. Sometimes you have to leave the bad guy out there. Because guess what? There's a good guy on his back who's going to do a lot of, much more benefit to our garden. So it's kind of an interesting thing. And they're very difficult. They're really difficult to spot. They're actually more easy when they have the little white things on them. Marigolds, the Taget species, excuse me. Plant these all over your garden. Their roots, as I said earlier, they emit an enzyme that deters root-eating nematodes, Mexican bean beetles, and many more insects. They're great companions to bush beans, lettuce, potatoes, kale, cabbage, I mean, just basically anything. You want to look for the cultivar, either the African marigold, which is T. erecta, or the T. petula, which is the French marigold. You had a question?
You mentioned before hot marigold.
Yes, the calendula. Okay, there's calendula, which is also sometimes, if you're at the nursery, they may call it a pot marigold. It is not the same thing as a marigold. I don't know how it became called, pot marigold, so it's a little confusing. It's great beneficial, but its roots are not emitting the enzyme that these marigolds are. Did somebody else have a question?
Yeah, you said African marigold, and what was the second one, a French one?
The French marigold. It's T. erecta, which is the African, or T. petula, P-A-T-U-L-A. Mint. incredibly invasive. It's a really good, it's a great companion plant though.
Don't plant in the ground.
Don't plant it in the ground. Put it in a pot and stick it in the garden in the pot. This way you will get, and actually you can bury, a little bit of the pot. But keep it in the pot. I used to just strangle it and just take the bottom out. I don't even do that anymore. Keep it in the pot. It will find its way out even in the pot. So, but you'll get, it won't as quickly, but it's a great plant, and it improves the health and flavor of broccoli and cabbage and cauliflower. Its flowers attract beneficials, and the spearmint and peppermint repels aphids, flea beetles, and as you can see, it just takes everything over. It's beautiful, though, and it's great in Mahio.
And bees like it.
Exactly, bees love it. So that's why, it can be invasive, but we just know how to handle it. Nasturtiums, edible flowers. They deter striped pumpkin beetles and other cabbage pests. They repel squash bugs. They're a trap crop, as we talked about before, for aphids. Great companions for brassicas and cucurbits. They improve their growth and their flavor.
Question?
Yes?
I know from experience that nasturtiums attract aphids, and if you don't get rid of them, they kill the nasturtium plants very quickly. So what do you use to deal with the aphids when they're on the nasturtiums?
We did not have that problem, but if I have a problem with aphids and I need to, because where I put the nasturtiums last year was in my three sisters' bed. So I'm not sure if somebody else was helping along with keeping the aphids, because aphids, it did not become a problem. But if you need to, if you end up having a problem with a pest, we always say to go with the most organic way possible. So if it's something that you can't physically pick off or do something like that, there are insecticidal soaps that you can try to use. Neem is a very good product. You always want to look for something that has the letters OMRI, O-M-R-I. It's the Organic Management Institute review. This means this product is organic, and so it's safe. So I would recommend, if you end up having a problem with aphids and you can't control it via, with companion plants and stuff, that happens, then to look towards OMRI. They have a website which they'll list a bunch of their products, and you can find them in in most of the stores. Another one is the onion family. They're excellent companions. They promote the health of other plants. Chives have edible flowers and leaves. They're great with carrots and tomatoes to plant with them. They're a great companion to carrots, the carrot family, brassicas, the gooseneck family, and nightshades. They deter Japanese beetles, aphids, weevils, fruit tree borers, and spider mites. It's a good insecticide plant that attracts predatory insects that feed on pest insects. A lot of fruit tree growers will use the onion family. They'll plant garlic, they'll use time-release garlic, different forms to try to keep animals away. So I highly recommend the onion family as to look to for something like that. Because something like the onion family I mentioned before, not only these garden pests, but then we have our bigger pests like deer and woodchucks and stuff like that. So they tend not to like the smell of things like the garlic and the onion. Woodchucks don't like mint, I can tell you that.
The ornamental garlic, will that do the same thing?
The ornamental garlic, yes. Next up is oregano. It's a natural pesticide. It works with a variety of different vegetables, and it's a perfect pair for brassicas and cucurbits. It deters many insects, including squash borer, flea beetles. Its flowers attract butterflies, bumblebees, mud dauber wasps, and that feed on caterpillars. Radishes. another great companion with brassicas, the cabbage family, carrot family, legumes, gooseneck family. They repel cucumber beetles and squash bugs. They deter flea beetles, and radishes come in a variety of shapes and sizes. The roots, as well as their greens, are very tasty in salads. And finally, sunflowers. They're a great companion for a lot of the different vegetables, particularly your shorter shade-loving varieties. Sunflowers help support vines. They attract birds and other beneficial pollinators to the garden. They're great with cucumbers, and they deter armyworm when planted with corn.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Sunflowers, I've had trouble planting them from seed,
Okay.
because animals love them.
Mm.
And they snip them off when they're like this tall.
Yeah. Sunflowers do best when they're planted from seed. They don't transplant very well at all. So you just have to kind of, I always end up putting a few more seeds down than I need, figuring I'm going to get a loss. And then I'll put a light mulch down of something. So, sometimes there's all of a sudden like craziness comes up, but I'd rather craziness come up. So I'd recommend, probably putting down a few more than you actually need. And then also, you may need to put some mint around it. I had a very bold groundhog who didn't care that we had 5 dogs. He was shaking my sunflower on a very still day one day, and I put some pots of mint on the backside, and he never came back. So
How much sun does mint need?
mint well, it likes a lot of sun, but it can do, it can thrive in 4 to 5 hour plus, I'd say. If it has less light, it probably stays more contained. I mean, it's such an invasive thing, so if it's not getting all of its light, it actually may be the way we all would want it. Did somebody else have another question? So just like some plants get along really well together, plants also don't play nicely in the garden together. So onions and peppers don't like beans and peas. They physically will detract from the productivity and the growth of the plant. Broccoli and lettuce don't get along. And despite being in the same family, cabbage doesn't get along with broccoli and cauliflower. We always have those relatives we don't get along with. Yes?
Now, if you had different raised beds, could you grow one
Absolutely.
in one bed and the other in another bed?
Absolutely. You keep in the, that's fine, yeah. Because they're not sharing the soil. Because what happens is it's on the soil level that they start to, mess with one another.
Okay.
So you can have all of it, Sometimes I'll put the broccoli maybe in one bed, or I might do it in a container even, and then put the main crops in the bed.
Grow broccoli in a container?
Absolutely,
Wow.
absolutely. In the right size container, and I believe on the back side of the square foot gardening sheet I gave you has my notes from our container talk, and it has the right size container for the vegetable you want to grow.
Perfect.
And again, same family, but it doesn't get along. Carrots don't grow well with dill and parsley. So there's certain things that you need to know. And tomatoes don't like brassicas, corn, or potatoes. We tend to keep tomatoes away from potatoes, even though they're in the same family, because they get affected by the same blight. And you really don't want to risk losing 2 crops at once. There is a new plant out there which just came over from England. It's called Ketchup and Fries. It's a grafted plant. The top is tomatoes, and the roots are potatoes. I'm going to get one this year to see what it's about. grafted plants are so much fun to play around with, but in general, you don't go planting your potatoes with your tomatoes just because you could risk. So in review, building a polyculture, it's a holistic concept due to the intricate levels that you're working the ecology. The benefits include helping to eliminate the need for chemical fertilizers and pesticides. It's a way of planting your garden so that the plants benefit from one another, and they're put in close proximity to one another so that they do so. Companion plants enhance the beauty and health of your garden, and you're working in harmony with nature. Native bees prefer the pollen of annual flowers, so incorporate them into the garden. It will help to build the polyculture. Look to flowers like snapdragons. The heliotrope with its beautiful deep violet flowers and its strong vanilla scent. Bees love it. Salvia, goldenrod, lavender, black-eyed Susans, zinnias. They attract beneficial insects including bees, lacewings, ladybugs, hoverflies, parasitic wasps, and butterflies. This picture, talk about throwing some seeds down. I literally just threw a whole bunch of zinnia seeds down in an area next to my garden, and the most lush cut and come again zinnias came up. And every day, the flowers, even though there was no breeze, they'd be kind of moving about. And when I would come over and look, it was because there was so much activity going on. The bees, the bumblebees. I took so many pictures with butterflies. I had no idea how they would attract butterflies, and it was just so much fun.
Did you literally throw the seeds?
Well, I basically I have a tendency sometimes when I'm planting, because I plant all these gardens, that when I get to my own garden, I get tired. And, the one time when we did cucumbers, I was being really good, and then I just kind of went like that, and I got so many cucumbers. It was great.
22 pounds one day in a harvest. From about 3 square feet.
Yeah, it wasn't. I get tired. It happens. So I don't really believe. You can't overcrowding is. There are a lot of edible flowers to look to, also to fill in the spaces. So they do double duty in the garden for us. They can be added to many delicious dishes and salads. Calendula, Dame's Rocket, hibiscus, Johnny Jump Ups, Nasturtiums. Not to mention your squash flowers are edible. Choose flowers whose colors and textures enhance the beauty of the vegetables. Think about partnering varieties that mature about the same time, early season, mid-season, and late season varieties. You can have annuals that will fill the garden from the early days of the cole crops into the warmer and hot season vegetables of those that love the dog days of summer, and right on into fall. It's important to plan ahead and to keep notes when you're trying to start a polyculture. Building a polyculture can be fun, and it's a healthy way to grow your own delicious homegrown harvest, but it takes a little forethought. Another important consideration when setting up your garden is crop rotation and succession planning. Crop rotation is the practice of growing related vegetables in different areas in consecutive years. It's a simple way to reduce the occurrence of soil-borne diseases. Most pests and diseases can damage the plant from the same biological family, but not of unrelated crops. Crop rotation is a principal mechanism for building healthy soils. It's a major way to organically control pests, and the crop rotation interrupts disease cycle and prevents depletion of soil nutrients. The 4 major families, actually it's 5 major families, that benefit from crop rotation, which I've listed for you. Brassicas, the Apiaceae, the cucurbits, the Solanaceae, and the Fabaceae, the legumes. You can go on the internet and you can find crop rotations for 8 plant families or more. It can get kind of crazy. I kind of focus on these 5. I work within that. It's a good place to start off. This is a diagram of one of my clients' gardens. It's one of our 8x8 gardens. It's 45 square foot of growing space. You can walk into it. The beds are 20 inches high. It's enclosed, so deer can't get into it. So I basically started off with this crop rotation, and so now I have a plan each year when I go into the garden, this is my starting point. Another easy way to do it is just separate beds. Yep.
Sorry.
Sure.
With the idea of rotating, how often, like if you don't have that amount of space, and you still want to rotate your crops, is every other year?
Yeah, I mean, if you can't do it every, even just rotating, if you're in one bed and you always put your tomatoes in one space, put them on the other side of the bed. Just get them away from that side of the bed.
Okay.
That will help.
Just not in the exact same spot.
Just don't put it in the same exact spot. And then if you can't,
and then like the following year,
yeah.
put it back?
Yeah. You can, try to work it into different areas of the bed. It can be hard depending upon how big your bed is. You want to make sure that you're, it's all because you're going to continue to build it. There's no way to get around not building up soil pathogens. Make sure you mix up your varieties at the very least of what you're planting. This is an example of a very easy crop bed rotation. She's got 4 beds, and I just rotate them. The last and fourth tenet of setting up a polyculture is the use of succession planting. Succession planting is simply planting something in the vacated spot. So there are a lot of different methods for sowing multiple crops of, say, short season vegetables like radishes and spinach. You can reseed the same vegetable there. Each time once you've planted a crop and say you've taken your radishes and you've harvested it and you're like, okay, now I have an empty spot, simply put in a little bit more compost because your plants are sucking the nutrients out of that spot. So anytime you go to seed or plant something new, it doesn't have to be a lot. I mean, we're talking about a square foot, and a square foot literally is this. So, your radish crop is finished, and now you want to put spinach there. So you just need like a couple of scoops full, of compost, and then you can plant your seeds.
And with the compost, you just put it on top because you said you don't want to do a lot of.
Yeah, you don't want to, like what I'll do is I'll kind of put it on top. I might just take my hand a little bit and do this. But I'm not doing I'm not like digging in and disrupting, because depending upon what's planted around it, you've got a whole network. Think of a subway system in New York. You've got a network of roots that are underneath there, so you don't want to risk damaging it. Yep.
When you do the crop rotations, not to get off of
No, that's okay.
Is there any particular order that is more helpful?
This is where some of the folklore comes in. They say to follow certain things with other things, but not really. It's just the main focus is to make sure that you're not putting that same family back in that same spot. If you can't do it every year, do it every other year. Do it as much as you possibly can. Because in the end, if you don't do it, you find that it's not that your plants aren't going to grow, but they just won't be giving you as much of they may not grow as well. They may not be as productive, and they certainly won't be as nutritious because, as we discussed, some of the stuff in the soil has been taken out and not replenished.
What do you do about, now a lot of my herbs are perennial.
Yep.
So what do you do, how do you think about that in terms of?
Well, when you're planting your perennials and such, I mean, the ones that come back in our area are usually the ones that will work well with everybody. So it's really not like, I'm trying to think of a certain herb.
Well, you said dill and parsley should be.
Okay, so dill and parsley. So you want to make sure, because I keep dill in a container, so that's where I've controlled that.
Okay.
But so if you have it there, you have to kind of work around it. Just be like, okay, I can't ever put carrots over there. So. So succession planting, so that's where you're filling it in. You want to just, it's not, we do a bunch of things. So there's seasonal gardening, so there's the spring, the summer, the fall, and the winter. That's basically, we kind of use a combination of succession planting in practice. I set up spring gardens and summer and fall and winter gardens. But in the course of that time, I will have areas that crop up because maybe my radishes or my spinach is spent. And I'm going to go in there and I'm going to follow it up with another. So it's not that it's any one method. It's a combination of many methods. When I approach planting the actual garden, I look towards the square foot gardening method as a good guide. It makes certain that the plant is given the right amount of space. And as we discussed with succession planting, you have your nice little square that's been spent and you can put in a new plant. I recommend highly to map things out. I put everything on paper because I can't remember anything. I first use pen and paper and then I go to my computer. It will help save you a lot of hassles in the long run. In this way, I always start with the vegetables, and then I go, okay, let's put some herbs here. Or like in your case, you can map out your garden, and you know where your perennial vegetables are, and then that way you can start to fill in the blanks like a puzzle. And then the last thing I put in are the flowers. So to review the 4 tenets of a polyculture, you want to set up permanent garden beds, which allow us to easily control the soil environment. The reliance is on compost and the importance of soil health. There's an author, Wendell Berry, who wrote a book in 1977 called The Unsettling of America. And in it he says about soil this: the soil is the great connector of lives, the source and destination of all. It's the healer and restorer and resurrector by which disease passes into health, age into youth, death into life. Without proper care for it, we can have no community, because without proper care for it, we can have no life. Understanding what goes on in our own backyards in the soil is important, and it's also very important to understand what's going on in American agriculture. So I highly keep your ears peeled for what's going on in our world. The 3rd tenet is the high-density mixed plantings, and the 4th being the prompt succession plantings. Intensive planting suppresses weeds and enhances the overall beauty and health of your garden. Building a polyculture is a holistic concept due to the intricate levels which it works the ecology on both a soil level and a plant level. Planting to cycle nutrients to different crops and to attract the beneficials. The most important thing about having your garden is being able to enjoy it. Being able to enjoy watching seeds sprout in the early spring, breaking forth through the cold ground. It's a miracle. The plant grows and then flowers, and the most awesome thing happens. From that flower, we get a fruit. And in time, we get to have many delicious meals and snacks from it. And who wouldn't want a refrigerator to be filled with delicious fresh vegetables? And perhaps you've pickled your cucumbers or made some garlic scape pesto. The garlic scape pesto is just a preview of the deliciousness that you're going to enjoy from that garlic. Think of the soups and salads and sauces you can enjoy. I can't wait for summer. It will. Come on. Don't you feel a little warmer? There are many advantages to having your own food garden. Your organic fruits and vegetables and herbs are more fresh, more nutritious, and more delicious than any other conventionally or even farmer's market farmed fruit, veggie, or herb could be. Building a polyculture allows us to grow a large amount of food in a small space, allowing us to boost our vitamin and mineral intake significantly. We save water. As home gardeners, it's much more efficient than commercial farming systems. And intensive square foot gardening works towards conserving water by completely filling the soil surface so that nothing goes to waste. There's no travel time involved, and we've controlled the environment in which it's grown, reducing our carbon footprint significantly. The less steps from the garden to the table, the better for the environment and for you. I appreciate you all coming out today, and if anybody has any more questions, yep.
I have a basic question. You're showing the gardens where the plants are all very close together, and yet when you look at the plan and how it's supposed to be, and it says it is 4 inches apart or 6 inches, so how do you reconcile this planting everything together versus each plant needing so many inches?
So when you're looking, depending upon, get my handy dandy guide. So using the square foot gardening method, depending upon what you're planting, your larger plants are going to take just that 1 square foot. Unless it's the zucchinis take 2. They need 2 square feet of space because they're going to spread out in room.